Well, if we play that out with U.S. domestic politics as part of it, let's go to what a potential second Trump administration would look like. We know historically President Trump was fairly transactional. You can envision perhaps him seeing he could make a deal with China over Taiwan, and we don't know what else. But you worked a lot with senior Trump officials during your time. Did you see any indication of that transactional approach in your dealings, or what would you expect from a second Trump administration?
Well, just reflecting more on the open literature, Jim, but obviously, if you and I and Ray, we all recall our times in government service fondly, and it's impossible to put those perspectives out of mind. But grounding this answer on the evidence that I can see in the literature, and of course, the president, should he become president again, Mr. Trump in this case would be the final decision maker. But it seems to be, and it'll be intriguing to see who he surrounds himself with in terms of cabinet appointees, sub-cabinet appointees, who the national security advisor is, who the US trade representative is, who the Treasury Secretary is. It seems to me that the calculus, at least in the early parts of the Trump administration, would be to be quite forceful with China. And that is to say, I think a Trump administration, a second Trump administration, would actually start with the premise, the very ancient premise that trade follows the flag. If the American flag is withdrawn from the Western Pacific and East Asia, then think about things like trade agreements. Think about things like the issue a few years ago with 5G. If China is ascendant commercially, in investment terms, in trade terms, in the Western Pacific and in East Asia, if American companies are not competing, if American investment has fallen off, if trade with the non-Chinese economies has fallen off, does anyone seriously think that when the Chinese delegation arrives to talk about your 6G network or your 7G network, or co-investing in smart cities programs, or maybe signing up to Belt and Road, if there's a perception that America has withdrawn to its side of the Pacific and that's some grand economic bargain to create, if you like, a geopolitical division of influence, does anyone seriously think that Australia, for instance, would make the decision that we made in 2018 to block high risk, which effectively meant Chinese companies, from building our 5G network? In other words, a so-called deal, which I know is talked about, would actually give strategic primacy to China, not just militarily, but most critically commercially. And I just don't see a proud US administration that wants to see American goods, services and products dominate through their competitive excellence, through the quality of their design, through the quality of their the features of whatever it is, whether it's telecommunication services or biotech services or manufactured goods. I just don't see America withdrawing. And so it seems to me that the commercial side, the trade side of this is intertwined with the military side. I think under a Trump administration, my guess would be, just reading the literature that I've been reading, is that America would in fact double down on its Indo-Pac or its Indo-Pacific presence. And indeed, as I understand the debate within the Republican Party, and you see this sometimes play out in Congress, there'd probably be an inclination to say, well, you know what? Yes, Russia is a threat, but it's not existential. Europe can deal with Russia by and large, and yes, there'll be American underwriting of European security through NATO, but the grand strategic equation that, if you like, will shape the destiny of the world is the G2 relationship between the US and China. And I just don't think America is for softening in that contest.